Mute.
Okay, good evening and welcome to the Gull Lake Trail Steering Committee meeting, Thursday, February the 11th. We have attending the meeting in person.
Whoop.
What? In person, tonight we have Amber, Bill, myself, and Ross. Zooming, we hope, will be Mark Ronai and Paula West.
Paula is connecting to
And
audio.
Tessa could be late coming, correct?
Correct. Paula is on.
Paula is on. Welcome, Paula. Can you hear us?
She's waving. She is on mute.
She's on mute.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. You're sounding loud and clear. That's a change because the last time we did Zoom, it was hard to hear. So have you done a little tweak to the
I
audio?
believe they may have done some tweaking. I don't know how council meetings have been, but
Okay, Paula, just to update you, the only people that we're missing is Mark Ronai, who's supposed to also be Zooming, and Tessa, who could be a little late. And what temperature is it in Florida right now?
Oh, it's 78 degrees at the moment.
You poor thing. How are you surviving?
Oh, it's hard, but I'm managing, especially if I look at your temperatures every day.
Yeah, it's going to be a while before we even get above zero, I think. Well, we're glad that you could make the meeting, realizing you had to get away from the sunny south environment to hang in there with us tonight. So I think what we're going to do is go ahead and work down the agenda, and hopefully Mark and Tessa will show up soon. So is there any changes to the agenda as presented? If not, I would accept a motion to approve the agenda.
Oh, motion.
Second by Ross. By
I'll
who?
second.
Okay. Discussion? Okay, motion approved. Okay. Approval of the January minutes. I want to thank Amber for doing such a great job. That's it's well documented.
recording helps.
But yeah, and we do want to, because I know that Mark Ronay was, when I listened to it, you really couldn't hear him because in the audience. So we got to make sure that we make sure that everybody's by a mic when you're participating in the meeting. Okay, so I entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll approve the minutes of January 2021.
Okay, second. Okay, discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay. Aye, okay. Very good, Amber. I don't think we see anyone here for open forum, so we'll move down the agenda to number 5, old business. And first up is the Hazelwood Lower Roy Lake Road intersection. And I know that Mark and Amber were going to tackle that. Have you had a chance to do anything?
Yes, Mark sent Joe Hall at Copper Creek an email. So we all had just a mini exchange. He said that it'd be great to make it a 3-way stop and thinks that physically painting the bike path across the road would be helpful. That's about as far as we got on the intersection. So he's pretty much open to dialogue and ideas. And the 3-way stop and the painting has been passed to Public Works and the engineer, and they all seem at first glance supportive of it.
So the Public Utilities Committee has discussed that?
No, they have not discussed it. It's just been put on their radar until we kind of have a more exact design path. We'll probably entertain it a little bit later on, but it has been added to their thought
Yeah, well, it's not like
process.
though it has to, done for it, that's something
Yep.
down the way.
Yep,
Okay.
they'll have to go through their proper channels
Yeah,
on it,
right,
but
yeah.
Joe Hall and Public Works are initially supportive of the three-way and potentially
Okay.
painting the crossings.
Did you guys discuss, Amber, how that would cross Joe Hall's property then, or not? Is that kind of a later?
He was kind of open to it. He's had many dialogues before
Yep.
with Matthew and Mark Hallen, and so yeah, it'll have to be looked at. There are utilities on almost 3 out of the 4 corners of that intersection. And so once we kind of have an idea of what the engineer has in mind, we discussed a couple more preferred ways, but I think ultimately like traffic flow is going to be a big thing, and the safety and having the stop sign
Yeah.
will be pretty important to the function of that intersection.
Okay.
Good.
Paula, since you live close to that road, you got any comments to make at this point?
Paula, you're on mute.
I think a three-way stop is going to be absolutely essential there because the bikers will stray all over the place. They do, even though if you have them, the lines marked there, it's still probably going to be a problem. But yeah, we're going to have a three-way stop there.
Okay, very good. All right. That's in the program. All right, item B, under engineering, there are several topics that we want to discuss. And we'll have, see if Amber got any general comments, and then in your packet, we're going to be, under this item, we're going to be looking at the WSN agreement. That was mainly Bill's comments that were submitted. We're going to be looking at the budget documents. Those are about 5 pages that are in your packet. My letter that was sent, and any other engineering discussion that we maybe have forgotten. So Amber, you got any engineering comments to make at this point?
The beginning, just so we're all on the same page, it was not discussed at January city council meeting. It has been put in their packet for February with no amendments to it. So they're just got their packets today. So they'll be able to review it over the weekend here before their meeting next week. So that's the general update on what council has seen of the packet or of the agreement. And as far as the budget goes, I hope it makes sense. I made it so it made sense to me. Hopefully it gives some more information, and I can kind of walk you guys through it as we get to
Yeah.
that one.
Okay.
So if you guys want to start with Bill's comments, that was sent out
So that's
as a supporting document within the email. So I had forwarded that email to Mark Hallen, our engineer. He had time to look at it, and then I spent about an hour with Mark kind of going over some of these things, some of the questions and the topics, and that is my summary in red of our discussion.
Okay.
Some of it are my own thoughts, and
Okay.
most of it is my interpretation of what Mark said.
Okay. So here's how I'd like to do this. Being that most of these are yours, Bill. So if you want to, when we get down to those, if you feel like there's some that are relevant, or if you want to kind of just go over them, that's fine also. But let's start with the first one, and that's the reconcile of the budget that identified. This was a budget that was submitted with the grant that had $411,000 for construction costs, okay? Engineering costs. But then that was modified with a higher engineering the engineering budget, which is more recent, of $506,000. And so the question is, what was the $95,000 difference? And I think Jenny was going to talk to Mark about that difference. And so in the red, is that correct? Is what happened? Why the difference? Is that correct?
Yep, so what's written there in red, it says the 411,000 was likely a soft estimate, possibly the product of a formula based on the estimate, the construction estimate for the trail. With the updated 506,000 that was given in the WSN's newest proposal is based on an educated calculation based on the project scope and level of experience of service that NISWA expects. So the difference is more of a soft estimate versus kind of where we're at today. The cost of construction has gone up versus when that grant was submitted. And just
Well,
a more
grant was
educated.
only the grant was submitted in last fall. That wasn't that far.
Correct, and I don't know, because I was not a part of it, I just pulled the document that was given in the most recent construction estimate that I could find. And so the numbers between what was submitted and the most recent construction estimate are not the same.
Right.
Roger, just to comment on that, I think based on some information that Jenny sent out that Therese, who's the Lakeshore lady? Terry. Excuse me. Terry and Matthew may have decided to keep the original amount of that contract in the budget so that it would show an increased amount of matching fund. That's just my guess that they, that was one of the things we were concerned about, is being able to show a higher level of match. So they may have consciously chosen to leave that lower number in there. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Okay.
Mark is on the Zoom now.
Okay. We started out, I think, when we originally got the engineer's proposed contract, looking at that difference. And then in further discussion, we said, okay, we really need to have the whole project budget laid out along with the project, this expected project income, which Amber has done, and that's back on the spreadsheet that looks like this. And as we go through that, looking at the numbers, it looks like we have that the engineering budget not only is overrun, but that the entire project amount has been overrun by a difference of $676,000. And I think that's the bigger question that we need to look at first, is where is that going to come from? A, if it's needed, or B, is the original construction estimate, was that too high? And I'm just wondering if maybe Terry and Matthew maybe looked at that, at the original, and said, that's adequate. We don't need to go any further than that. We don't need to add in the additional amount coming up. But at this point, looking at the numbers that have been given to us, the 15% contingency wasn't allowed by the grant, and they must have known that going in.
They didn't. They did not know that going in. They didn't know that until the 11th hour when it was taken out by the legacy committee.
Okay, well, there's 429,000 of the 600. And then the engineering is another 95 on top of that. So we're up to, well, call it 500, whatever, 525,000. And then apparently the grant wasn't as large as what they applied for. So there's another 100,000 or so short there, 150,000 short there. So at this point, you have to look at it and say, I think the biggest question is, can you proceed with the project? when you don't have the funds.
You know, Bill, let's say that I've cut that and covered in my, let's go through, let's get through
Okay.
the-
Well,
because
okay.
that will be, and that's in my letter, is to how we're going to deal with the deficit.
Well, okay, so as far as reconciling then the budget, that's the biggest question.
Right.
Do we get down into and you actually want to go through the
Well,
engineering part of it, or?
If that's what we're here for, and.
Well, I guess that, what I'm seeing now is that's, the various things that I pointed at in there are really a little bit redundant unless we can answer the first question.
Okay, all right, so the first question, we'll talk about the deficit later.
Okay.
The second question is, it has to do with the land acquisition, the land acquisition cost. Hi Tessa, we're on the 5B. And this document here that's got the WSN agreement on. Okay, so under 5B, the land acquisition costs. So, so Mark has identified, and you have identified in red then, that there are many variables in that land acquisition cost. And that's, the land acquisition, as I understand, there's going to be a separate contract written on that, right?
Yes, we do have the option of doing a separate contract. So tying in part of your email,
Right.
we would need to approve the design and engineering before we would do a separate
Right.
contract for land acquisitions. We don't want to start that process until we know we're getting the funding.
Right.
And so that will all be city staff and the engineers to go that route. And then we will be bringing it to city council for whatever additional approvals are needed.
So would this be a separate contract with WSN or with a land appraiser or whom?
However, it needs to be worked out.
Okay, I don't know if WSN is in the land appraisal business.
I believe they have a contact
Oh, okay.
that we would.
So they would contact with a land appraiser to go, okay, so WSN, if that's the way we're going to go, they will be leading this project, the land acquisition, and they would assumingly have an appraiser. Would there be a representative from the city involved with this?
The city staff.
The city
Yeah,
staff?
myself and Jenny
Okay.
would work with
The landowners involved then?
the landowners, the engineers, all of that would happen in-house here and with the engineers. And if we need to use WSN's
Okay,
services, if we need to look elsewhere, we will sort that out as we go.
okay, all right, very good. I think that answers at least my question on number 2. Bill, the rest of these are your questions. Is there any ones that you really want to talk about?
Okay, well, if you want to run through those, a couple of them, at least I'd like to emphasize that 3A, I still feel strongly that if we proceed, the finished product having a 10-foot wide bituminous trail that's lasts for 20 years or thereabouts with minimal maintenance is a goal. I mean, that's the primary goal of all this. The other parts of it, the grading, the tree removal, all that's fine, but I think that the nexus of that whole project is getting that trail built properly with a good mix. And we pointed to, that area from Brainerd down to Crowing State Park as being an example of what the DNR is using now for their mix.
Or mix,
And,
yeah.
I mean, it's a trail, it's a state trail. I can't see it as having a whole lot different usage than what we would be looking at on this one, except to maybe have more snowmobiles on it in the winter once it freezes up. So I really do feel that the engineer should be making that contact and determining it. Just MnDOT has come up with, over the years, this goes way back 50, 60 years ago, they've come up with mixed designs that are not good. I mean, there was one way back that was so rigid, they were trying to make concrete, Portland concrete pavement out of it, and it was so rigid it just fell apart. It just got beat up. They've had another one that was supposedly an open design that would let water run through it. That didn't work. Minnesota, it froze up. I think Baxter ended up trying some of that on College Drive, had to overlay it 3 years later. We got this piece of Colonel Thorpe down here that's falling apart after what, 3-4 years since that was built. So there's some mixed designs that simply aren't good. And it's all oil and acid and aggregate and maybe some filler that goes in with the aggregate. So we're not talking about major differences here. I mean, if they're talking about maybe the state used 4 inches of asphalt and they don't want to use quite that much, well, then we can make that decision. But at least the mix itself should be good. I'd really like to see them pursue that.
Well, that's going to be further down the line. Obviously, that's going to be, we're not probably pouring the actual asphalt until the spring of 2023.
But that needs to be in the
budget.
Plans and specifications.
Cost of it.
So that it gets bid. When it gets bid out, yeah.
I think at least we've identified, from our standpoint, that's a concern that we hope that it's considered,
Yes.
right?
So it sounds like on item B, it sounds like perhaps their property survey services would be included in with land acquisition, because there will be some description writing and probably some property corners that need to be staked for those property owners. As you go in to tell somebody, okay, we want, I think those lower Roy Lake Road properties, I think probably run out to the center line of the road. And then there's an easement for the existing pavement that's out there. So we're going to take, what, 33 feet away from them. They're going to want to know where that 33 feet ends.
Right.
And we need to write a property description that they can file that says it's been taken. So that, somewhere or another, one way or the other, that should be included in somebody's estimates of cost.
C is actually a land acquisition that we could,
It can be part of that, yeah, but it should be specified in there then.
oh, yeah,
and-
right.
And
Yeah.
enumerated, not just left on an hourly basis.
Right.
I'm not too concerned about soil borings, although it should be looked at. To work with and coordinate. I think the engineer, once this project gets started, the engineer should be taking the lead on it. The control staking, I think when you, Amber, when you said the base staking will occur, was that their answer then?
Yeah, his phrasing was base staking, and then that whoever gets awarded the contract, they'll have kind of their own methods. So if there's additional staking that needs to happen, they have their own methods that
Okay,
they
when
may
we
use.
the term base, are we talking about the aggregate base under the trail, or are we talking about just the control staking, basically?
I think he was saying that when you're talking control staking and he's saying base staking, it's a very similar
Okay.
Term.
Similar
Base has
term.
got another.
just
reason.
different ways of
Okay.
wording similar things.
That's. I
Okay.
guess if they're going to put that into the contract, if the contractor needs to provide his own staking, then based on the control, then that will show up as a contract item then in
Yeah.
construction.
Before we go further, did you say Mark is on?
Yes.
Mark, are you there? Paula?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, are you
Okay.
with us on the document that we're looking at now?
I am. I have reviewed it.
Okay.
I don't have it in front of me right now. I'm in my truck.
It's in yeah,
It's
probably
like an
not.
audio book.
You keep driving then. Okay, Bill, go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay, so then I'm looking at item G under the construction phase. Site construction observation, they've got in their proposed contract $180,000. And that's for 9 months of construction at 30 hours a week. I know somewhere at 40 weeks at 30 hours equals 1,200, so they put in 13. I can't believe that that project should take 9 months to construct. It's not really that elaborate a project. But even if it were at 1,300, it's 180,000, we're talking $125 an hour or something along that line for construction observation. I mean, normally this is a field inspector that does that kind of work. It's a question. I don't think we've got a solution to it. I did mention under the basis of the contract is hourly. The 506 is just an estimate. I'm wondering if it should not be a not to exceed contract. And it sounded like the design portion could possibly be a not to exceed. And I kind of tossed some numbers at Amber that, it used to be years back, I've been out of the business for 25 years, 6 to 8% for design based on the construction cost, another maybe 6 to 8% for construction services. But that would include more staking that apparently is involved here. So that would be like 12 to 16%. And I think based on their 411 and not before contingencies, it came out to about, 14.4%. So that would be in the ballpark. At this point, based on that same number, they're up to 17.7. It seems like it's on the high side.
So the not to exceed concept, and I'm not that familiar with contracts and city contracts, is not to exceed a common part of a contract? Ross, you've been around the city for a while. When you're looking at proposals?
When he mentioned it to me, he said that sometimes the city will choose to put it in. It would be more fitting for the design portion of it if they wanted to put a do not or not to exceed somewhere.
I mean, a lot of times when we are, voting on something, it's always, there is a not to exceed number.
Okay. So being that's is a legitimate concern, and the city council is going to be looking at this contract Tuesday night, right, at your meeting. That's something that maybe you should talk about specifically with them, with Mark.
So,
Okay?
yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you asked me to go through this, and I did, and I just brought up things that I saw as I read through it. And that was one of them that it seemed like it was pretty open-ended. The other part of that same concern is that somewhere down there they had made mention that if it dragged into another year, they would be using their next year's hourly rates instead of this year's. And obviously, the way the construction schedule is being laid out, it sounds like most of the design wouldn't take place until close to the end of this year, and then all the construction observation and so forth would be into the following year, which would then mean
22 mostly.
perhaps another hourly increase. I think the hourly rate should be pinned down in the contract rather than.
So I guess if I could interject for a second.
Yes, Mark, go ahead.
Is there some reason why we would, what is the total engineering and design services, observation, everything? What's the total amount that Widseth is looking at?
506,000 for design and construction.
Right. So for $500,000, is there some reason why we wouldn't request another bid or two? Can this be competitively bid, or is this locked in?
That's a good question, and I think Amber's going to answer that.
Yeah, Rogers posed that question earlier. He posed it to us, and then you also asked Joe with the legacy grant. And one reason to not do it is to get a different engineer up to speed. Might take a lot of time and money. Another reason is it might prolong the project further. So those are two reasons
Okay.
not to, but
Uh,
it's definitely, there's no reason
I
you
guess
can't.
I guess one thing we could do there to answer that question would be to actually sit down and interview another, an engineering firm or two and say, listen, here's we have a $500,000 project here. Would you be willing to bid on this? And how could you overcome this idea of getting up to speed and also, being familiar with this? And because I really think that part of this about them, they've covered themselves 19 ways from Sunday here, including this idea of a different rate that they're not willing to quote us at this point in time for work that is really all about, are they, if they're part of the cause for this to be delayed, then they're going to raise their rate. They're going to charge us, to complete the project. That seems illogical. So, and at $500,000, I assume we're going to get more than one bid for the construction of this.
Correct.
Correct.
That's right. So, I mean, maybe it's all going to be the same, and but part of the other thing about this is if someone walks in the door, and if a citizen walks in the door and says, "Okay, dudes, gang, what'd you do here for competitive bidding?" Well, this $500,000 section, we awarded it, and the rest we bid. I mean, it doesn't. I don't know that it feels like the right use of the funds.
So I
Okay,
have
those are good points. My comment, you laid out a couple of reasons why we do not want to go to a bidding on the engineering, Amber. But being that WSN is the city engineer, is there any anything in their contract with the city that says that they will be the engineer on projects like this?
I have not reviewed that contract, so I'm
What
not
do you
aware.
think,
I
Ross?
don't know.
I don't know it for sure, but I don't believe that to be true, but I don't know it for sure. I think that to have another bid, to give us some idea and keep them a little bit honest, I think is a good choice. The one thing I would say, and I only caught the tail end of it with the pocket park, is they had another engineering firm do the pocket park. And then in the end, when there was problems and who was going to warranty, and we had water coming from the street into the pocket park, and the firm that was doing it said, well, we didn't look at that. Well, I don't know why you wouldn't engineer it and not look at that. They said that should have been your firm.
Mm-hmm.
And it did, if you have issues, it did make it, well, thrown back between the two, and the city just sat in the middle and nothing was able to get done. So I would say that if we're close, if the numbers are close, I would give the nod to our own engineers.
Sure.
But I kind of, if Bill's questions, the $13,000 for monthly meetings, I looked at that and questioned, that seems like a lot of meetings to me. The $180,000 for the site construction observation, but yet it seemed in the contract, it was very clear that they were not going to, they weren't going to correct anybody. They weren't going to monitor anybody. They weren't going to warranty anything. So what are we kind of getting for that observations which is going to be a question that I'm going to have when at the council meeting, but them are kind of some of the things that threw up to me. It's
Right.
kind of.
So it appears that that we feel that getting another bid is appropriate. So being that we're only a recommending body, should we make a motion to request that the city council look at getting a bid on the design and construction engineering portion of this?
Roger, I have a question. So are we discussing just Nisswa's portion, or is this the total? Is this WSN grant that we're talking about for Lakeshore too?
Well, both. Yeah. Same
Because-
engineer, and
Well,
we'd have to, go ahead.
Before we could make a decision about getting another bid, if this is for the total project, not just for Nisswa's portion, would we not have to, discuss this with Lakeshore? We're making decisions for them now.
That's a good point, Paula.
I think I saw somewhere in the documents, and I couldn't put my finger on it real quickly. And yet, I certainly agree with you, Paula. It would have to be a joint discussion between Lakeshore and Nisswa. But I think I did see something in there where it said that Nisswa was the lead agency of the two.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, more of a physical, financial part, right?
Administrative.
Administrative, right? Yeah.
Administrative, we were the fiscal.
That's a good word for it, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. But yes, it would definitely take a joint venture back and forth, to make that decision to go ahead. That we couldn't do it unilaterally and then say, okay, we're gonna have one engineer on one part, one engineer on the other, when it's really one project.
So, the city council is going to be looking at this agreement next week. So we're kind of caught here at the 11th hour of communicating with them our concern and the fact that Lakeshore is also involved. So, is Jenny expecting the city council to approve this contract with WSN next week?
It's on there for them to vote. So we can get with Lakeshore, and see where they're at. But I think ultimately, it's up to city council. So we can convey their recommendations and the concerns to them, and then Ross can
Well, and
relay some of these things in
That's-
person, and Mark will be there to answer any of
Sure.
these questions, any other questions that get presented. But yes, it is on there to vote.
And
Okay.
Amber, I think
Well,
the word recommendations,
Okay, we'll go Ross, Bill, and Paula.
Okay.
Ross?
I think the word recommendations is exactly what I would use. That is, we're going to come forth with, these are our recommendations, and the reasons why we think a second bid, fiduciary responsibility and accountability and so forth. And then, list out the concerns that we have. But that's, I think.
Is that a motion?
This document that we're looking at with all these questions and answers is in their council packet as well.
Yeah, okay. All right, so, okay, before we do motion, let's get to the questions here that need to be answered. Bill?
I go back to the $676,000 that we don't have adequately allocated for the project. And I think we're putting the cart before the horse, because I think that number has to be addressed before you'd enter into an engineering contract to do part of it.
Yeah, that's true.
This is, we're kind of getting to the point where, as I said earlier, if there's $676,000 short in allocation, and I think that ends up with, if I looked at the numbers right, $365,000 for Nisswa. I think we have to figure out where that comes from. That's based on a percentage between the two,
Yeah.
Lakeshore and Nisswa. We have to figure out where that's going to come from, and not enter into an engineering contract that we start spending money out ahead when we don't know how we're going to pay for it.
Okay, good point. Paula, you have a comment?
Well, yeah, a couple of things. First, regarding the WSN, wouldn't it, before you would even approve this, wouldn't it be prudent to sit down with them and discuss some of these line item issues and see if there's some negotiating power there, some clarification? And then regarding Lakeshore, they already have a working relationship with WSN, because weren't they the the design firm for the portion of Lakeshore that's already constructed. So they may not be very interested in opening up a whole nother bidding process, which I tend to agree. Getting up to speed, there may be things that another company just won't be as familiar with the project and may leave out of their bidding process. And then thirdly, to address Bill's point, we need to know what the city what other sources of funding could the city come up with? You know, we said in the grant application that we would try not to use taxpayers' dollars. We didn't say we wouldn't use taxpayers' dollars, but you know, I think we need some clarification from the council on, are there any other city sources of funding to address this shortfall?
Agree. Mark, any
This
comments?
is Mark again. Yeah, you know, I don't, you know, a value engineering conference with them would be appropriate. You know, if we choose not to do a second bid, which is not the end of the world, but a value engineering you know, where we sit down with them and try to work out, you know, the obvious things that Bill talked about. You know, like your construction observation seems out of whack. Your length of time seems a little out of whack. Your meeting seems, let's shave a little bit of that. And plus we want it not to exceed. Then the second part of it is the only way that we are going to get to another number, and which is I think what we need to understand is do we need to ask for a proposal from Woodseth to say, all right, if we spend $25,000, or what's the number we need to spend to get to a better number, an updated. You know, using current construction, using the best information we have, it's all going to be estimates. But do we need to get another number so that we know if we are? Because refining the estimate, are we $600,000? You know, because a whole bunch of it's contingency. You know, if we made that a 2% contingency, well, how do we feel? You know, with the price of oil. And if we arbitrage against it, what's that number look like? You know, just there's some things that we can do to further refine what our shortage is. But I am, you know, just to say we're $600,000 short, let's sign a contract, does seem a little sketchy.
Yes.
I guess, Mark, I'm a little bit, I guess I'm thinking if this is our contract, these are the numbers. Are you, unless I'm missing something, are you saying that?
I'm talking about the construction contract. I'm talking about how much is it going to cost us to do this? Because I don't think we don't actually have a bid. We are working off of estimates. Do we need to further refine the estimates based on the latest information?
Okay.
Mark,
And in order to do that, I think we would need to spend some money.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. Mark, Bill has a question for you.
Mark, in your construction activities, have you ever used an independent cost estimator? I think there
Yeah,
is.
yeah. Once upon a time we have. I guess the other thing we could do is, you know, right now is a good time to get like a paving contractor, you know, to get their full attention because they're not busy yet. Could we get them involved to help us to better understand what our number looks like? You know, a little bit of engineering, you know, pay for a little bit of people's times, or you know, or like you said, a professional cost estimator. But maybe because we're a small town and we're local and we could lean on some people, we could spend a little engineering money and get Anderson Brothers or someone to give us you know, some help with figuring out what this might cost.
So Amber, with what Mark's suggesting, would our federal grant cover that?
The federal grant, which if you skip ahead a few bullet points, we did finalize the contract on that one. $37,000 can go towards professional services.
Not a lot. All right, we need to come to a conclusion there, how we're going to resolve this. Sharing our concerns with the city council next week. And obviously, Ross is going to have to be our key person here to express that we need to slow this thing down a little bit and have some time to review the process. Is everybody in agreement with that? I don't know if we really need a consensus or not, or just a consensus. I think we all agree that we all believe that we need to review the whole project again and possibly have another bid or two. So with that said,
Roger,
Ross?
can I jump in
Paula?
real quick? Amber.
Amber, I'm sorry.
So when you're saying review the entire project, are you saying you want an updated estimate? And then do you want WSN to provide a new estimate as well as other engineering?
Well,
Like, do you want a new trail construction estimate or just the design?
I think that's the only hard figures we got right now is the WSN design and construction engineering part. That's the only figures we have, the
Okay.
506.
Yeah,
The
so
500
you're
the
not,
$500,000 figure is what we're looking at.
Okay.
That's our concern at this point.
Okay, it's only part of our concern though, Roger, because that difference compared to the original input is like 95,000
right.
of the 676. And the 676 also comes from their construction estimates that
Good,
they did
yes.
during the design process. We paid them whatever, 10,000 or something or other to come up with that. And, you know, I think that they should be attacking that bigger number first and seeing if that 676 is real. I mean, if that's real, then the city council between Lakeshore and Nisswa have got a bigger question that they have to answer before they answer the question about who's going to do the
Yeah.
engineering on it.
So let's talk
Somehow or
about,
another, we need to address that.
I agree. The
construction
bigger
issue.
figure is definitely key. So, and that was part of my letter, was my biggest concern. So we might as well just talk about that now. We as a committee, and it all initiated from the Park Commission that really set this whole thing up. And that is, it was my understanding we were going to build this trail without taxpayers' money. And I realized that we put, thanks to Paula, she identified in the application, we talked about hopefully not having to use taxpayer money. So what is the city's policy on this? Because we have always felt that this would be done by grants. And I don't know if the Park Commission, when you first talked about this, was that your goal, was to build this trail without using taxpayers' money?
I think that was the ultimate goal, and we knew that we would be able to get the most buy-in if we.
Okay,
and
okay.
that was the goal.
All right, so the Park Commission felt that, the Trails Committee has always felt that. And we also identified that at those 3 open house meetings we had with the community, because people came to those wanting to know, are we going to, some people were concerned about we're going to use taxpayers, and I always told them, nope, we got funds, we got this big legacy grant access to that we could get it done without use taxpayers' money. Well, obviously we're now got a deficit of $600,000. So we need to ask the city council, what are we going to do?
in my research that I did today to this question, in the grant, and keeping the integrity of it, it says to try to avoid
Right?
using taxpayers' dollars. So that was the language there. I went back through some of the city council stuff, and I did not see specifically that they voted anywhere to not use taxpayers' dollars. So that's just a little of the history on that one. I think what would be helpful in coming up with ways to minimize this deficit is if the steering committee could help look for alternative funding sources, if there's different grants. That would be very, very helpful if that's a route that we are looking to go.
Ross?
Of the 676, how much of that do you think is Nisswas and how much is Lakeshore? The way I kind of see it, looks like Lakeshore has quite a bit of additional funding through CRAS and stuff. So I'm kind of thinking most of that number is us, but I was having a hard time coming to that conclusion.
Yeah. Bill?
I did a split based on the two construction estimates, one for Nisswa and one for Lakeshore. Just did a percentage split. And of that 676, I came up with 365.5 for Nisswa's portion, slightly over half.
Yeah, if you look at the two construction estimates that were in your packet, Nisswa's total for estimated construction was 1,551,000, and Lake Shores was 1,307,000.
That's about,
So
that's what I used it for.
yep, they're comparable, but they're not exactly 50-50.
This was a slightly larger than half.
So Roger, in that 679,000, 429 thereabouts thousand is this 15% contingency. And is that a valid percentage, or can that be reduced to get a better estimate of what the real deficit is?
That's a good question, Paul. In past estimating I've done the same thing. I've thrown in 15% to kind of cover
15%.
contingencies. But to get down to a hard number, you don't really get to a hard number until you bid it out. Or somebody takes a real close look at it and says, okay, here's a number I think is good without contingencies. And at this point, I can't say that because I
Yeah.
didn't put the estimate together.
Okay. Mark?
He's
You
not on
there?
anymore.
Mark?
Nope, he's not on.
Oh, he's not on. Oh,
So I do have a quick question though, because looking at the matching funds, Lakeshore has $100,000, over $100,000 more in matching funds than we do.
yeah.
So I
well,
got to figure that that's going to go into that. Won't that factor into the 676?
Only insofar as coming up with the total funding being 316.
Yeah,
Three,
their
one,
Lakeshore's
1, 6.
match is 400,000. Nisswa's match is 282.
Yep.
And so that's already accounted for in the funding.
Okay.
And
You know,
then,
some of Cass County's match came from their Fund 73.
Yep.
Yeah, 5,000.
I mean, maybe that's fund would contribute more money, but that'd be up to Cass County commissioners.
Let's just, to answer, I think Ross's question a little bit more directly. If you look at the way the contingencies were put on, which is a big part of what we're talking about here, it's 15% on both of those numbers that Amber just talked about. So
Okay.
this one goes up, Lake Shores goes up to 15%. The
Okay.
engineering is anticipated to be split, as I understand it, based on the construction cost. So again, you're back to that slightly over half being this was.
So here, let me throw this out, Ross, for communicating and with the rest of the council is, we have our concerns. We're concerned about the big deficit. We're concerned about the engineering costs. And we kind of feel like we should put a hold on this until we get this is resolved. And that means that they will not be able to sign that contract with WSN Tuesday night. So is that, you think this is a way to go with the
Well, I
city?
think that, I 100% on board is we need to figure out what this deficit is. And if I understand Mark, which I think I do, he's saying even if we have to spend money to get that number to put out some bids and stuff, I think that would be, because I think we need to understand that, because I would assume not only we have issues coming up with that, but Lakeshore is going to have issues coming up with their portion. And so we need to make sure everyone's on the same page. And I agree that there's no sense in having a contract signed if at the end of the day, we get to it and we don't have the funds,
We don't have funds.
you know,
Exactly.
which is a possibility.
So, just so I'm understanding that we would prefer to delay the project, not build what we can, wait till we have all the funds available
That's right.
and build it in one fell
And
swoop.
if the city council wants to fork the rest of it, that's their decision.
And what if we get to filling that $600,000 deficit and then we go to bid and it's 30% higher? And we're in the
That's right.
same place.
Could be.
Well, I don't know if so Amber, are you saying just build as much as the money will allow?
Could be an option.
Ooh.
I think, and, you know, because I also am following you, I guess I'm thinking is just, we do have a little bit of time. But just we need to figure out the deficit of how we're gonna handle it, whether we're gonna build till we can't, or whether, you know, we're gonna have the money, and who knows, we may find out that it's not as bad as what.
Could get a favorable bid.
You know, so I just think I just don't think we have solid, I don't think we have solid enough numbers to really make a decision.
I don't either. I
And
don't think so.
that's where I think.
That's what you really need to tell the
I
city
think that's what
council.
we need to have is we need to know.
Okay, so what I'm,
So, Amber, can you, can you communicate with Terry before our city council
I
meeting?
can
And kind
try.
of get a feeling on where they sit, and if their city council is concerned about this deficit. Do you think they've even, I don't know if the Lake Shore's even seen this.
Jenny, Terry and I sat down and we went over this. Terry was the first one that I went over it with, because I was like, is this what you know? Am I missing anything? So she is aware, she saw this exact document. While it's a concern, there's still so many things that are out in the future too. Like, we don't know what bids are gonna be. We don't know what the costs are gonna be in December or January, or if we delay it, you know, what they're gonna be in a year and a half from now. We don't know. We know that there's the possibility of having a shortfall. We know that we need to figure out, if that's the case, where those funds are coming from. Do we need additional grants? Is it coming from the taxpayers' dollars? If we want to do more preliminary work, where's that money coming from?
Okay, so you feel that you know where Terry stands. You communicated and she's aware of everything.
I will definitely circle back and see if
Okay.
there's any new developments. You know, week by week, there's
Sure.
more stuff that
Yeah.
gets uncovered. So I will for sure circle back with her. I'll do it first thing in
Are
the
you planning
morning.
on attending the Tuesday meeting?
It's looking like I'll need to be there. I don't want to put it all on Ross to remember everything. But yeah, I'll go back through everything with Jenny tomorrow. I'll
Okay.
connect with Lakeshore. Biggest things being how are we going to handle any deficit? I won't even just put this, because this is a snapshot of today. This is not the end all result.
Yeah.
Snapshot of today. So how, in general, are we going to look at handling any deficits? Engineering,
Engineering.
where the steering committee is recommending that we get alternative bids or I don't know if bid is the correct term, but we seek other insight and opinion in the matter. Those two being the biggest things. And with that, the preference would be to hold off on construction of, not even construction, but the entire trail project until those things
Yeah,
are resolved.
including the new land acquisition project. I don't know if somebody is writing that right now, but that needs to also be put on a hold.
Yeah, we can't start on that one until we figure out the engineering.
Right, exactly. Bill, you had a question?
Yeah, I guess just another comment. You know, to get firm numbers that you would be ready to sign on the dotted line with a contractor, you know, you have to go through the design phase. On the other hand, if that firm number that comes in from the contractors is in excess of these numbers we're talking about, then the council has to say, you know, we can't afford it. We can't do this. At that point, you spent $237,000 to find that out. What Mark is suggesting is that we try to firm up those estimates, whether we do it with WSN, with some other method, some other methodology. I'm not going to sit down and do it. I'm so far away from current prices. I'd have to start from scratch, and I'm not going to do it. But it could be done. You could get a third opinion from somebody. But I hesitate to jump into that design phase, which then also leads to the land acquisition, until you get those numbers and
Yeah.
figure out, at least on paper, how to handle that deficit.
And that number is always re-updating too.
Well, I think the big picture here, we got to find out from city council on, is this going to be, project going to be subsidized by taxpayers?
Well, and like I said, I think regardless, it would be beneficial for the committee here to look into alternative funding.
So
Even if it's-
you're asking us that we go out and try to find other grants?
Well, if we don't want to use taxpayers' dollars, then we got to close the gap somehow.
Yeah,
Well, three choices: grants, gifts.
or Bill win the lottery, you know, that's a.
Well,
I-
I'm looking for alternatives. You know, if we don't want to use taxpayers' dollars, how do we cover it?
We're not picking on you. Your point is very valid. You know, it's
Yeah,
gotta come
I
from
mean, if
somewhere.
I have to start looking at getting other bids for engineering, and this isn't my only project, like it's gonna have to be a group effort, and it's gonna have to come from somewhere.
Yeah, okay, I think we've pretty much discussed our concerns now. I think we need to pass it on, our concerns now, to the city council. Okay,
Sounds good.
can we?
I think, and
Bill-
look for direction from the city council on how
Yeah,
they want to proceed with it,
exactly, yeah,
so.
okay.
And then if you decide to proceed with it, then we get into the question about the engineering and the overrun of the engineering.
Yep.
cost.
Yep.
But it's like the overall question first and then that question.
Yeah, sure.
It's kind of a
But
subject.
Bill, just so all on the same page, you feel that we can get a closer number. I fully realize we're never going to get, till you go out for bids, you're not going to get that number. But we can certainly get a closer number, you and Mark feel, than what we have before us.
Mhm.
Is that, am I saying that correctly?
Something without contingencies in it, yeah. And it'll probably be a bigger number without the contingencies is what it amounts to.
The numbers that were in your packet and that are up on the screen here were as of May 2020.
Right, yeah,
So if you're wanting a date
Yeah.
reference as to what was used, that's
Oh, yeah, and
May
that's,
2020.
I don't know how much
Almost a year
construction
ago.
prices are going up right now. You know, it's hard to say, although there's a lot of housing going on
So-
around the state. But
yeah.
Otherwise, I don't know how.
So what does how much of these documents that we were getting, will the city council get? Like, will they get this? This one? The summary budget, will they get that?
They
Tuesday?
have not gotten it, because it funnels through city staff and then Ross being the liaison.
Do you think, Ross, this would be important for them to have Tuesday night?
probably, but we should be able to hand that to them on
I
Tuesday.
we can get a hard copy
So make
for
sure
'em.
they have that one
We can
in.
email them copies too, so.
Okay, so are we ready to move on? I think Ross got a handle on what he needs to say. Uh, Tuesday night, and Amber's going to show up. And we'll watch you on YouTube. Okay.
Roger, can I just
Yes,
say,
Paula.
before we move on, it makes me really uncomfortable to hear us saying, oh, can we afford to go ahead with this project? We've spent years trying to get this money, and if we don't find a way to go ahead with it now, we'll never do this project. Because
Exactly.
we won't get the funding again. And we're also jeopardizing Lake Shore's portion of it too. So, I mean, I think we need to step back, as we've just been discussing, and really look closely at this so we can, hopefully move forward with it, because, there's a lot at stake here.
Absolutely.
I
And we're-
agree. I totally agree.
Yep.
Paula, and I think, I think these are good legitimate questions to get answered, and I think taking time to figure it out is worth the thing, but I guess I'm still in my head thinking that we're going to continue to build on schedule. I don't see any of what we're talking about tonight, which I could be proven wrong, that would really set our schedule.
I
And
don't
I
either.
think we have a little time, if I understand it. I know I'm catching this very late, so you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have a little time to ask these questions. And because it's going to do no good to get done with it and still not have to figure out where the money's coming from either.
Right.
When WSN, we asked them about their timeline, and they said they could maybe look at pushing it back a month, possibly
month?
2, and stay on schedule. That was the response there.
Okay?
And again, we won't likely see additional funding until the middle of the summer.
Correct.
So
Correct.
Yep.
if that helps with the
That's right.
timelines of
Okay.
what they're expecting in their minds versus the funding, and going forward.
Has the legacy grant been officially awarded?
No,
No.
yes.
Yeah, I guess
not.
I was thinking that we had, are they going to start on stuff right away then? Because we really can't, I mean, what are we paying them from the other
Sure.
funds that we have?
Under, moving ahead, old business, item C, the federal rec trail grant has been finalized. So that funding is available starting now.
Yeah. right.
And 37,000 of that can be used for professional services.
37,000 for professional. Okay. All right. Very good. Are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay. Good luck, guys. All right. So the item 3 in the packet was the 5 pages of the budget document. So I don't know how much more, we've pretty much beat that to death. Do we need any more discussion on those documents?
Think so.
Bill, do you have any questions on those?
On which,
On these
no.
okay. All right, Tessa, do you have any questions? Paula, we're on the budget, those budget documents. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Okay, let's move on. My letter, I think it's self-explanatory, and I think we've pretty much talked about our concern about and that was my major concern, is the deficit. So I
think we
don't
hit
think we
all of
need
them.
to, we need to spend any more time on that, unless somebody has a question. Okay. So we're ready for new business. This would be the golf cart program, and we've got documents on that, and they're on the screen now.
Yes, so, in response to the golf cart ordinance, looking, I'm open to cooler names than golf cart program. But I showed this to the Parks Commission last week. This is just a general idea that I have so far of kind of how do we get some research, how do we get our information out there? How do we make well-informed decisions on the trail policy? So I am taking an approach of what can we do? Again, the golf cart ordinance is specifically geared towards where can a golf cart ride, what's the registration, what constitutes a golf cart, things like that. So some of the priorities being safety, clarity, people need to know the regulations and the expectations. We need to be consistent with enforcement. Things that we can do, we've talked a lot about speeds, determining the user types, and then getting that information out there. So these are just some ideas that I had. Definitely open to additional feedback or things that you might think would really work well or not work well. Currently, we're looking at adopting the golf cart ordinance, and then we would begin a community engagement and observation period. Looking at doing that this summer. We could do a QR code where people can do a survey. We have a sandwich board out there, and we're engaging with the community, finding out what they know about the golf cart ordinance, things like that, what's working, what's not working, counting, clocking speeds, things like that. Get some data, analyze how the policies are going, and present those results. Looking at a few locations, just again, threw some things out there. Some are along the trail. So we'd have multi-year data without the trail and then with the trail. Just some other points around town that might be important. One big one's the tunnel in downtown. That's going to be a primary point of analysis. Open to other locations that you might think might be beneficial. And then once the trail is constructed, we would do the same process along the trail. Again, doing surveys, maybe it's a QR code, it's, giving out freezy pops and catching opinions, counting users, clocking speeds, things like that. Again, analyze the policy. And so that would be after the trail policy is put in place. The golf cart ordinance would be in place. And we would be able to have some concrete data to analyze how well it is or is not working. So when you're looking at the trail, again, we would keep those same 4 or whatever points of observation. And then in the end, we'd be able to come back to city council with some concrete data. We'd be able to modify the policies if we need to, based on what we're seeing. So just a general thought of what we can do with the golf cart ordinance, in hopes of having good data to build the trail user policy, and then evaluating all of it. So again, open to different locations around town, ways to communicate this information, but definitely take an approach of what can we do, since education and information will be critical in the success of these things.
Okay,
So Amber, what I hear you saying, I think, is that we're gonna implement this golf cart program to kind of monitor use and regulation, and then use that data to form our trail use policy.
Yes, I think that would be helpful. We know that there's still a lot of updating that needs to be done to the trail policy. And I think this will give us some good information on like how many golf carts are out there. What are they doing? Where are they going? Do they drive in town? Do they, do we see more side-by-sides and off-highway vehicles than actual golf cart? Are people aware that they can have a golf cart?
so, okay, Bill, go ahead.
Just, looking at the locations of your field work, I think a suggestion I'd make would be down at that Sportland corner, the 7713, 371 intersection. You might want to double that up and look at the west side and the east side,
Sure.
because you've got really a different character of traffic coming, because you've got a lot of people, residential people from the lakes, Hubert and Barway, that are headed to Schaefer's from one side, or the church, Lutheran Church of the Cross there. On the other side, you've got a lot of Grandview people, Grandview, guests and so forth coming over, and just kind of see what that looks like coming from
Sure.
both directions.
Yep,
Would that make sense?
yep, totally.
Okay, any other questions about the program?
I think, I mean.
Yeah, I think it's
I think
definitely worthwhile.
Based on facts.
Absolutely.
And data, and I think that's always good, so.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good program.
Okay, if we're ready to move on, then in your packet, you have this diagram here that we're going to talk, that Amber is going to talk about the park
Yes.
design.
I want to reiterate, this is a draft. Draft. This is brought to you from the DNR. This is the boat launch on the property adjacent to Nisswa Lake Park. So if you guys can see my screen up here I can zoom in a little.
Amber, can you share your screen?
Yes, let me zoom out, switch, share screen. Where am I going? Can you see it, Paula?
Not yet.
Share screen. Oh, share at the bottom. Is that better?
I can see it now.
Okay. So we have the tunnel up here at the top. This is the boundary between Nisswa Lake Park and the DNR property. And then these little circles are the butternut trees that cannot be removed.
Right.
So this is just the preliminary concept drawing brought to us to kind of discuss, not that there's many options, but the trail options. So you have option 1 right here. Option 2 is further south. And then this right here is Hazelwood. So when you come up Hazelwood, it just dead ends. This is currently the trail that we are using to get from A to B. And this is the thick line here. That is the right of way for 371. So those are kind of the two options presented. Again, this is just a draft. We still have a meeting to set up with the DNR. They have a lot of restrictions for what they can do. And so what we have said that we've been talking about is we like option 2, this one, where they run parallel together, the trail and the road, and it will just soften the curve here. That way we do not have to work with 371 in the right of way. So just wanted to give you guys an update on that one. If you had any big questions or concerns, I'd be
What's
happy
their
to pass.
timeline?
They're looking at building it this summer.
Really?
Yes.
So, but they obviously wouldn't do that. Okay, so.
We would have
what
to
portion of
pay
this
for
does-
that.
What portion of this does NISWA pay for?
If we wanted the trail in there, we would have to pay
I was
for the
gonna say,
trail.
This is not, they're not gonna put the trail in there for us, are they?
No, no, we would have to put the trail in. So basically we just, at this point, are saying, save us some space.
At one time, quite a few years ago, actually, I recall there being some discussion about a joint use bathroom facility approximately on that, let's call it westerly property line. kind of
Yes.
Split across that somewhere.
Yes, on this diagram, down here closest to the launch, they do have a bathroom. They are not interested in anything besides a bathroom. So if some of the designs in the past have shown a more robust facility there, possibly some showers, locker rooms, cook shack. to that extent. The DNR is not interested in
Are these
anything.
vault toilets we're talking about?
There is a sewer lines and water, so we could have water out there. So it would not have to be a vault toilet. So that would be, again, probably at a later time.
Is the DNR putting in toilets now this summer, Amber?
They just have one there. What we've been doing at Nisswa Lake Park are renting porta potties.
And that's what they're talking here, though. They're not talking drilling a well.
I need to follow up with what exactly. He just kind of sent us this drawing. We had a very brief conversation trying to figure out the trail component. And I've looped in Mark Hallen and Brittany because they will each have their own. And Public Works, I've told everyone actually. The DNR will have to go through their proper steps to construct it.
And then do they have the money allocated?
They were,
I know in the past that's been a big thing until they actually.
I believe so, because they were looking at going to bid in 40 days is what he was saying.
Okay, good.
So
Okay.
I think they must have gotten the go-ahead and now they're sprinting.
Yeah, because that was actually supposed to happen a while ago and then it kept getting
Correct.
bumped. So that's why I asked that.
Yeah,
question.
so, yeah, some of the things that we've talked about are kind of softening this curve, just having the trail run parallel to it. That way we don't have to kind of get in the right of way here.
Yeah.
And then one thing that I had mentioned over here is, it gets to be a pretty steep bank next to the tunnel. And so just drainage and like keeping all that in mind and making sure we have enough space
Yeah.
for the topography,
The-
since there's no contours shown on this.
The separated parking area there, yeah, you got your cursor on it right now.
Yep,
That is for park use or?
that is for boat landing use.
Okay, so then if we want parking in the park area, we have to go beyond that and put it on the city property? Is that-
That's what the dialogue has always been in the past. It would be this shaded part. And so the other thing is we cannot build, this is called Outlot B right here. We're not able to build on it, so we would need to make sure that the road can curve, that somehow, yeah.
What-
Yeah, that parking lot would not be for the park.
What's with Outlot B?
It was in part of getting that land. They created a buffer between the road and the park, to remain untouched.
Okay, very good. Well, you certainly keep us posted on next phase of this, sure.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
But yeah, that's kind of the plan, is hopefully option 2 down here where it will
Okay,
just
very good.
flow.
All
Well-
right, moving down, anything else, Amber?
I had a comment. One thing we need to, I think, just kind of keep in the back of our minds is that as we've promoted this Gull Lake Trail, we've always said that the park and this area was going to be the trailhead. So, we'll need in the future to think about having the bathroom area or something that can have some trailhead signage, that will sort of designate it as the trailhead. I don't know what that's going to look like, but just to keep that in mind.
Yeah, exactly. The good point. It is a trailhead for people that want to start their journey from Nisswa. That is the trailhead, and they could park there. I guess they could even park in the DNR side of it. I mean, he's gonna,
No.
I think the
How do you gonna
DNR,
control that?
well, but we're also neighbors with them, but I think they're gonna be very, and they have, from what I remember when I was on the commission, they have very, very strict of what they can and can't do. I mean, their
It is very
leadway
strict.
is not, and the parking lot absolutely was, because we wanted them to pay for part of our parking lot. I mean, it just wasn't even close to being in the cards, so. But if I remember correctly from back then, Once that's designated as a trailhead, that opens us up for grants for the park.
Oh, okay.
Paula, do you remember that?
No, I don't, Ross, but that's something to look into.
I'm almost somewhere along the line that if that was designated as a trailhead, that opens up the significance of that park being a
Okay.
trailhead.
Okay.
So
Okay, we ready to move on? C7 is special concerns. I think we all know what those are.
Wait, what?
Any special concerns? Yeah, we got plenty of them. Yes, Bill's got a special concern.
I would really like to see the trail built.
Agree. Yes,
I agree.
absolutely. Second that. I think everybody here is a different trail advocate. Final discussion, comments? If not, we're ready for our next meeting and
Next-
hopefully,
Yeah, next meeting,
meeting.
would be March 11th.
and hopefully we'll have some
And
direction.
yes, if there's things to discuss and we'll see where we're at, we will meet. If there's nothing, I'll just keep sending out emails and packets,
Yeah.
until there's a reason for us to gather and decide.
Okay, very good. Well, I appreciate everybody's input tonight, especially Paula. Hope you need too much of a suntan today. Saved a little for our meeting. So thanks everybody for showing up on this cool night, and we'll see you next month. So meeting's adjourned.
And I'll just say, stay warm.
Motion and seconded.
Motion seconded by Bill. Bill seconded.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Good input from everybody tonight. Thanks.